This is Top Shop Podcast.
Shop Podcast.
Top Shop Podcast.
Podcast for automotive service business owners by Paul Donahue.
Hey folks, another great auto repair shop owner, Brad Holtkamp Automotive in Pleasant View, Iowa. In a couple of days, he'll be hitting the 28-year mark in the auto repair industry. So talk about somebody that's got some experience and expertise in this industry. I'm really looking forward to it. Brad, tell us a little bit about yourself. How'd you get in the industry, that kind of thing?
Well, I guess we can start with just saying I turned 60 this year. So that way nobody has to do the math.
Oh, I'm 61, so I'm in March.
So anyway, grew up in a rural area here in southeast Iowa. Grew up on a farm. We raised livestock, farmed a couple thousand acres of crops, pasture for cattle, hogs, a few other small animals. But farm crisis for the 80s, for a lot of you that probably know, took out a lot of the small family farms. And I guess, unfortunately, we were one, or maybe it was fortunate. I don't know.
Oh, wow. I remember Farm Aid, Brad, the big contract that they did to try to help. I remember that, yeah.
Yep. So yes, we lost, father lost his farm it would have been 85. And I'm one of seven. I'm right in the middle of all of that for the family. So knowing that going into farming, if it was even before we lost the farm, I knew that probably wasn't going to be my chance of getting that with the older brothers that I had that would be probably first in line for the farm. So I've always liked tinkering with things. If it was motorcycles, go-karts, bicycles, you name it, I was always tearing something apart, putting something back together. The older I got, the bigger my projects got to be, from our farm trucks to tractors to equipment, stuff like that. Learned how to weld at a very young age. So that's kind of where I got with my start, I would say. I did go to college for it. I will tell you, I went to a community college. I think what I learned the most there was probably automatic transmissions, and love doing them. I mean, that's just the way my brain works. I love, the pieces, the puzzles, stuff like that. I understood it. It worked for me. Went to college. After college, went to work for a Ford dealership. After a Ford dealership, I actually went to work for a parts store. Out of the parts store, I went to a GM dealership. From there, I went to a rather large grain elevator that had multiple locations. I did everything from working on 16-speed air shift transmissions to repacking wheel bearings and running gears for anhydrous wagons to welding grain elevator legs, climbing 180 feet up and welding downspouts. So after that, got called back up by Napa to run their store and working for the boss's son. I think there's a song about that if you remember that one. I finally came home and told my wife that I'm going to put in my 2 weeks. And my son at the time wasn't even a year old. My daughter was 3.5. And she's like, "You're going to do what?" I said, I had two dreams when I graduated high school, 1983. That was in 5 years to be married. And in 1988, I married my high school sweetheart. And then in 90, my second dream was in 10 years was to own my own shop. Well, it took a little more than 10, but in 1996, I started my own shop, April 1st of all days. And
We'll say.
So I guess the will to succeed. When I did leave the parts store, the boss's son told me that he says, "You better hope that works out because you'll never get a job in a parts store here in town." And, it left kind of a sour taste in my mouth, but I don't know if that's what gave me the push. I don't know if I should reach up and slap him or shake his hand today. So it's been a long time. Yes, I have run into him from time to time and we have good conversations. I don't hold it against him for what he said, but I do work for their family, for their vehicles. Started out in a 2-car garage, no insulation. And I did that for 2.5 years. And what I worked on mostly was automatic transmissions. So yes, no hoist. I was doing everything on my back. If I brought in And so I think 30 years ago, what we were working on, I was still doing transmissions with cast iron transfer cases, front wheel drives. Everything was done in my 2-car garage, 24 by 24. So we were out in the country, actually on a gravel road. So you can imagine the clientele you're trying to get, and to drive down a gravel road to get your car worked on. So I was kind of behind the 8 ball there, but I proved to myself, to my wife, and I guess to my customers that we were special and that we could do whatever needed to be done. and we treated everybody like family. And that's kind of the slogan we went with, was join our family of customers. And so about 2.5 years in, we started the plan to build a 4,000 square foot shop behind my house. So literally I walked to work every day, 100 feet.
All right.
And we were there till 2013. A building in the busiest intersection in town here in Mount Pleasant came up for auction. And I threw this pitch to my wife that, if I ever wanted to retire, the building I had behind my house, I'm going to lock the door, I'm going to walk to the house. And the next day, I just don't go to the shop again, to work on customers' vehicles. I'm done. I would have a nice building to keep my toys in, but I said, if I move my business into town, I can sell something that I have worked 30 years to get to. It's worth something. We can get something back out of it. And she says, well, you're going to have to do the legwork on this one. My wife, I will tell you, she is an accountant by trade.
Awesome.
So she is the true success behind this business. She's the one who takes care of all the numbers, keeps me in line. So I went to the bank and lo and behold, walked out, told her, I says, yeah, we can do it. It's not a problem. So we didn't tell our kids we were going to do it. My son had just a week before the auction, he went to Iowa State for college. And so the auction came, we purchased it. And it took me 9 months to renovate the building to get it to what we wanted. But we have over 4,000 square feet of office.
Oh, wow.
So it was an electrical co-op that covered 13 counties. So all their equipment and everything was stored in this building. So we do rent out part of our office space. We actually have financial advisors here. We have a chiropractor in-house, which comes in very handy.
Wow. Yeah.
So I actually have a 150-foot tower that came with it on the property that I have a wireless internet company on. So needless to say, I have fiber ran to me. So that's one of the perks, I guess, to having the tower. So we rent that out, and I have roughly 8,000 to 9,000 square feet of shop space. I have more shop than what I need because of what our business model is. And it wasn't that, yes, I can grow if I choose to. We are in a town of 8,000, a little over 8,000 people. There is quite a few shops in this town. I would like to consider myself an elite shop. We do training anywhere that we can get it, basically. We are alumni of ATI. We are part of Midwest Auto Care Alliance. I'm actually the president of the Southeast Iowa chapter at the moment. So we are very involved, and it's not just my shop that I want to see it succeed. I'd like to see them all succeed, and it's hard to do. But if another shop owner comes to me and asks me questions, how do we do this? I'm an open book. I can't fix all these cars. There's no way that I can do it. There's no way that just any two people in town can do it. But we chose to keep it as a small shop. We actually only have 2.5 technicians, and we do very well with that. At one time in our career, I mentioned to my wife, I would maybe think about starting a second shop. And she informed me that I would need another wife to do that. Now, just to let you know, that doesn't mean I get a wife at each shop. That ain't what she meant, even though I was thinking, But so no, that's not in her dream by no means. So if we want to fast forward to where we are today, yes, am I looking at retirement? Yes, I am. Do I have for plans for the shop? Our son actually came back. I never forced my dream on my kids, my daughter nor my son. My son kind of has his brain kind of works a little differently like mine. He's good at analyzing stuff and taking stuff apart, put it back together. A Rubik's Cube, it takes me longer to mess a Rubik's Cube up than what it takes him to put the damn thing back together. It's crazy. He has two in his car. He'll be driving and I'll pick one up, mess it up, and set it down, and he'll fix it faster than I can pick up the next one and put it down. And he laughs at me and he'll have this conversation with you while he's doing it. So don't ask me how he does it. He just does it. But he has come back into the business and he wants to take it over. He wants to run with it. And I will tell you that I can say that I was content with where my business was at. I was never really pushing it. Him, on the other hand, he sees the potential through the Midwest Auto Care Alliance, through ATI. You get to meet a lot of other shop owners, and it doesn't, it doesn't have to be ATI. It can be any of the coaching companies, but because every coaching company has its own unique way of coaching. And, it's no different than trying to pick out a partner for your business, for your life, or whatever. That is probably one of my regrets that I didn't do that sooner. But I can tell you, in 30 years ago, I don't know if there was a coaching company to help you out as there is today. So is it for everybody? maybe not, but I always wonder where I would be today. And now my son he's pretty much got full reign of what he wants to do. Kind of pulled me out of the office and pushed me back out the shop. I enjoy working on cars. I do, the challenges and stuff, but he has drove our business probably 35% over what we were doing, where we were content at being. And, we were paying our bills. We were doing okay. So he comes in, and he did inform me, though, that when he purchases a business, it's on the old numbers, not the new numbers. So
Sounds like he's pretty smart.
he is. And now my daughter, she went off. She got a master's in teaching. She was teaching at a high school, then a local college for a while and for a short time there. And then her husband works for Continental. We have a hose plant here in town. So he's on research and development for that. He's a chemist. So we have two grandsons, 6 and 3. So they keep her busy. So she's now a stay-at-home mom, and she works for us part-time. One of the things she does for us, she reconciles all of our parts bills, and we still write hand thank yous out to all of our customers. We also do cookies. And if you go on our Facebook, and if you know anything about doing the profiling through Facebook and stuff like that, or social media, you can get your keywords, what words used the most in your post. Ours just happens to be, our customers always claim about or talk about the cookies. So that's we have in our giant office space, we do have a conference room with a full working kitchen. So we make all of our cookies in-house. We do tell a few of our customers we make them in the shop, right on the workbench. But no, it's one of those things we've done now for years that we give out when a customer picks up a car. It doesn't matter if a tire repair or a transmission overhaul. That's what we always give out, a small bag of cookies to go with the customers. And my wife came up with a little saying that goes on the bag is thanks wouldn't be complete without a little treat. And that's stuck on the bag with our logo. One of those things to make the customer thinking about you when they drive by, thinking, oh, it's time for another another bag of cookies. So they got to stop in.
Right. Can you describe a major setback or a failure that you encountered along the way? Because this is a long journey to get to where you're at now, and how you overcame it.
I guess, we've had a lot of employees over the years. We've had employees leave that started their own shops. And I can remember the first time an employee left, and him and his cousin were going to start their own shop in another town. It wasn't nearby, which didn't matter to me, but he was 30 years old, and his cousin told his employer a week and a half before my guy finally got up the nerve to talk to my wife and I about it. And I think I surprised him. First thing I did is stuck my hand out and congratulated him for going after his dream. And because if you don't do it, you'll never know. You'll always be wondering, could have I made it? I'd rather see a person try and fail rather than not try at all. So I guess some of my biggest setbacks is having good people leave. And as I tell all of them, I wish them all the best of luck. If there's anything they can do, I'll be more than glad to help them out in any which way other than financial. Because if they want to lose their money, nothing drives you to work harder than to start from nothing. That's kind of the way I felt that I had done. Oh, if we go back to that very beginning, when I wanted to go to college, after we lost the farm, I went to the bank that my parents had started for me, a savings account with so many years ago. And I was informed that they needed that money to give to the farmers the next year to put the crops in the ground. So I could not get a loan for $750 just to buy some tools and pay my tuition. I ended up half that money from my grandmother and the other half from my girlfriend. Well, I told you what happened to that girlfriend. She is now the wife. It's the next stop is over. So we've been married now for 35 years.
Congratulations. I love hearing about the childhood sweetheart, things. I live in Utah, and Utah, a lot of people that live here have very good values and morals. I see a lot of childhood marriages in my neighbors right around me. So it's something I'm seeing disappearing from America.
Well, I will say working with your spouse can be trying some days.
My wife's right below me, speaking to the choir. Right. So
but I'm glad I have her here as a business partner, I guess you could say. I feel like you lose a lot of that conversation when you get home at night. Oh, how was your day? Oh, such and such happened. We know exactly what happened. So it seems like 7, 8 years ago, we built a new house. As we moved our business into town, my wife was originally from a small town. So she thought 25 years in the country, it was time to move back into town to give her 25 years in town. So we built a house in town thinking our kids were going to move away and their grandkids would come to visit. So we built a larger house, and now our kids are both in the same town, which is fine. We still have large family gatherings and stuff like that at the house. but I say that we go home and she stays upstairs. I go downstairs and I got my TV. She has her TV and we kind of take our time apart.
There you go. Because you're at work all day long. Yeah. What are some of the core values or guiding principles that you think have really contributed to the success of your shop?
Staying loyal to your customers, to your community. I'm very active in a lot of different groups as my kids got older through or growing up. If it was softball, baseball, soccer, we still sponsor some teams. As the kids went through school, they were more in the music side of things. My wife is very, her singing would blow you away, but my kids did the band and the show choir type stuff. And so we were very active in that. As far as music boosters, I actually sat on the school board for 7 years, serving part of that time as president. I am an active member in our local Kiwanis group. I am also on the chamber board for our town. Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts. My son is an Eagle Scout from 2010, and we are still both very active in the local troop. My son is actually the assistant scoutmaster. I'm the committee chair for both Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts. So we stay busy amongst other things that we do for volunteering in town, and that nothing gets you out more into the community than helping other people. I mean, yes, it's great that I could give money to an organization, but to see your face and helping somebody is probably the biggest joy for me to, take my time and donate my time to somebody else or to some group to help them. Yes, it's easy to write the check and just go off and do your own thing. The amount of time that we as a family spend helping other people or donating through the church, stuff like that. It's a couple of years ago, we were asked about our business. Our name was put in for a business of the year for our town. And for actually our county, and it was like 280 eligible businesses. So they had a questionnaire, it had 4 questions on it. And one of the questions was, what do you do for your community? Or what have you done and what do you do for your community? So we started filling some stuff out and like, oh yeah, I forgot about such and such. Oh, we've done this. Oh, we gave turkeys away for Thanksgiving. Oh, we did, all these different things. And it got to the point where I had to go back to work. And I remember I was working on actually a Ford truck and I had a notepad sitting up by the windshield wipers. And as I was working, something would pop in my head. I'd reach up there and I'd write it down on the notepad.
I do that.
And before I knew it, I had 4 pages exactly.
Wow.
I had 4 pages full. I went to my wife and I gave that to her and I says, here, this is what I came up with. I says, I'm sure there's more. So now we had to write the story. And my wife's like, how do we start this without making ourselves look like something special? I'm like, and I told her, I says, the way I would start that story is I had no idea how much I'd done until I was asked to write it down because I did.
Good idea.
I had no idea. So if you're ever down on yourself and wonder, what have you done? Start making a list and you'll be surprised by what you have given back to your community. I've never done this stuff just to to be able to write something on the list. I've just done it because that's what we do. That's way I was brought up. That's the way my parents brought me up. That's the way my grandparents were. So to me, it ain't expected. It's just something you do.
So how did you do in that contest that year? Of the 280 businesses, where'd you guys come up at?
Oh, so they picked like the top 25 and then they sent it off to some businesses in Columbia, Missouri. The lady that was the head of our chamber was from there previously. And so she got businesses down there to go through them. And they somehow did it on a scoring. Oh, and by the way, yes, we won.
Oh, you won. Okay. That's
Oh, yeah.
You won. All right.
Yes, I was informed that we had the highest score that they've ever given out. So it was crazy.
Well, that's a great answer to that question. So, what core guiding principles? It's real, genuine involvement in your community, giving back to the community that gives to you.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
A great answer. Now, this is the question that just about every auto repair shop owner loves hearing the answer to. How do you find, hire, and retain good techs?
Well,
I mean, I'm getting a lot of different things now.
No, it's
a family that eats together, stays together. There's a lot of shops that do a weekly lunch. Either they cater it in, or they shut down Friday at noon and they grill dogs and burgers that they get at Costco or Sam's and get the guys all together at a table. So I've heard a lot of different things. Going to the schools and actually getting interest at an early age There's a lot of different techniques for looking for techs. So tell me what you guys have found is successful for you.
I think shop culture, people are like, oh, whatever. I think, has a lot to do with it. Knowing there's I'm going to call him a young gentleman. I know you know him. I'm just going to go by Travis as a
Okay.
first name. Owns a company, him and his partner. They have 2 shops in Des Moines. And I met him actually through an ATI boot camp, but it wasn't until Vision years later that my wife and I were asked to come and talk a little bit about our coaching company that we had. He was actually there as a potential shop. I didn't know that until probably 3-4 years later, as I was sitting at Vision later in the evening and sat down with him and a couple other people. We were just talking, and Travis and I didn't leave that room that night till probably 2:30 in the morning. And we were talking about, this guy is amazing, just basic, about half my age, but what he does with his shop and stuff like that. So my son I introduced them. Travis has done a very good job, kind of took him under his wing, explained a few things. He went and did a shop visit with him. He is alumni with ATI also. My son has gone with him to meetings out in Baltimore with him. It's just amazing what he does as shop culture in his shop. You talk about, we close at such and such a day and we feed our employees. We do offer lunch every Wednesday to our employees. With that full kitchen my daughter makes, we need to schedule in at least a nap time on Wednesday afternoons. That's all I got to say, because we way too good, way too much. But that's something that we do. As you ask, how do you get them employees? I think a lot of it is word of mouth of how you treated your past employees, how you treat your customers. I think it comes full circle to you. It is very hard to find that right fit. We have gone through, I'm sure as any shop will say, you have the ones that make it a little while, you have ones that you think greatly of, but I will tell you, it is hard to compete against girlfriends, wives, and sometimes family, because we lost some very good employees to the girlfriend needs to move to go to college. Well, I know what the next sentence is, we're going to go with them. Or we had one that actually came up from Texas through a mutual friend of our son's and started working for them. That didn't work out. We hired him, did great, loved the kid. His family were expanding their business in the food catering type business back in Texas, and they wanted him and his sister to come run that for him. And he went back and he told my son, after he had everything loaded up, he says, I thought your dad would at least offer me a little more money to stay. And so my son said something to me about it. And I says, I would offer anybody something a little more to stay if I felt that personal growth that they had in them. I says, but I'm not going to compete against family. So, and you can't do that. I don't want to hold somebody back for, I ain't going to stop them from being with family. So that is probably the hard parts about having good employees than having them move on. But to hire new ones, I go in our automotive program that we have here in our local high school. I go in every year and talk to them about the industry. They ask questions. I tell them, it's not just fixing cars. It's everything from selling parts to customer relations. It's all over the board what you can do in this business. So finding them, that is tough. And I will tell you that the good ones that I have come through the door and wanted to come work for me. We had one young gentleman that came in and interviewed with us and sat down and was talking with him. I told him I'd get back with him in a few days and let him know what we decide. So he left, and the wife and I continued talking about it. And we decided right then and there that we were going to give him a try. And so I told him I'd give him a couple days. I called him back probably a day and a half later. I said, why don't you come back in? We want to sit down and talk with you a little bit more, and pitched it to him. And he said, yeah, you take the job. And I says, how many other places did you apply? He says, I didn't apply at any other place. You were the place I wanted to work at. So that's the one I wanted to go to. I says, and what made you decide on us? He says, I went through your social media and what you do for your community, for your customers. He says, your core values were on track with mine, and that's where I wanted to be. And that is the young gentleman that ended up following his now wife to another town to college. And I told him, I says, if you need a reference, I said, through the groups that I belong to, I know people throughout the whole country that have automotive shops. Just let me know and I'll make a phone call wherever you want to go. It's that way of treating your employees. I think it's the right thing to do.
Awesome. So I just did a video the other day on burnout. and it's real. A lot of shop owners, they wear too many hats and they get burnt out. And one of the benefits of making sure that you delegate and do the other things is reputation. You don't want to get a bad reputation in town. So when you have a really good reputation in town, you're the go-to employer and you attract techs to you. And that's what you've done through your basic core values. You are attracting that particular person, the type of person that you want to have. I always say go slow to go faster. And I have a problem with that because I always try to do too many things at once. The pot called the kettle black. But when you really sit down and go slower and plan out, hey, what are the things that we can do in our community? And you're not putting out that next fire or answering that next phone. But I guess it goes to being able to work on your shop, not in your shop. And that's a really big thing that's very difficult for all entrepreneurs of whatever kind of business to do, is to focus on working on their business and not being in the business all the time, because you can't be up here looking down at your business, seeing what you need to do.
One thing that we had years ago, and as a small starting out, I'm sure that everybody starting your own business, I knew how to fix cars. I didn't necessarily know how to run a business. I just thought it all kind of went hand in hand. And some of the previous employers that I had kind of explained some of their stuff and the way they do things, and I'm a sponge. I suck it all in, and I would work, I'd get up in the morning, I'd go out the back door to the garage to work, and the kids would come home from school. I would come in, we would have supper. The kids would go to bed. I went back out the back door, went back to work. I got to make it. I need to make a little more money. And just to let you guys know, when I started that almost 30 years ago, and I was doing moonlighting while I was working at the parts store. So it wasn't like I just started out from scratch, but I think my labor rate was like $24 an hour. And I figured for what I was getting paid at the parts store, now don't laugh too much at me. I had to work 12 hours. I had to bill out 12 hours a week. And the parts I'd make, I think I'd marked them up 30% over my cost. And for you new guys out there today, that ain't going to cut it.
Right.
We are now well over $100 an hour in our shop. We are, our parts matrix throughout Tech Metrics is wonderful for us, what we do as far as that part of it. But I would go out and I would work day in, day out. Sundays, if I had free time, if there's something going on with family, yes, I do it with family. And then our local parts store had a thing up in another town. We drove an hour and a half to go to it. And the wife and I, we went up to it. It was actually up in the Quad Cities here in Iowa. We went up to it and they had a speaker, and the speaker was talking about how the guy would do anything for anybody and how he would give people credit. And, his family didn't have a whole lot, but everybody else, they had good running vehicles and so on and so forth. And he worked all the time. And they said then one day that the husband, something happened and he's no longer with us. And, where's the family at? They said they had the longest line at the funeral of everybody who said how great of a guy he was. But, they couldn't get back of all the time that he had spent in his shop. And that hour and a half drive back home was one long conversation. And the instructor said, if you were working over 60 hours in your shop, and I totally believe this, if you were working more than 60 hours in your shop, you should just as well close your shop and go work for somebody else, because you're making more money working for somebody else and you got your own personal time. From that day forward, I was no longer open on Saturdays or Sundays. I would work late if it was something I had to get done, just keep up. I was a one-man shop, and that holds true some 25 years later. I am open on Saturdays, Sundays. That 5 o'clock comes, we close the door. If there's something I need to finish, I will go ahead and finish. But a lot of times, you know what? It can wait. You have a family, you have a life. With that being said, don't ever shortchange your family.
Well, you've already answered several of the questions like shop culture and work-life integration. So you've already answered these questions, what you said. Let me ask you, what trends or developments do you see that are shaping the future of this industry? And, what are you guys doing to prepare for them, if anything?
I guess saying that means we're in our 60s now, that we have seen a lot of trends, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can remember when electronic ignition came in, because I can still set a set of points.
Yep.
We've come a long ways, haven't we?
My first car was a 1971 Cougar. So, if you needed a side marker light, you'd go to the auto parts store. It was 27 cents and you'd take a Phillips head screwdriver and replace it. My Porsche Cayenne Turbo downstairs, I think it's like $250 to replace a light bulb.
Well, I have an Aston Martin sitting here in the shop that needs an alternator. It's about $4,000. So yes, try to make that phone call to the customer.
Right, you're right. It needs a what? What does it need?
An alternator.
Oh, well, $4,000.
Yeah, by the time we end up purchasing it from the dealer,
Yeah.
No, your parts store is not going to have that. And by the time it's a V12s and by the time you get that thing put on the car, yes, well, then throw Uncle Sam in there. It's going to be, well over
$4,000. Yeah.
4 grand. So the trends that I've seen kind of come and go, or where do I see us going? I think everybody, it's kind of obvious too now that maybe EV vehicles aren't quite ready yet. Hybrids, I'm fine with those. I understand EVs and I think they all have their place. Me personally, living in small town Iowa, my son has a couple of great friends, which both happen to work for Boeing here in the Midwest.
Mhm.
And one of them bought one of these new electric vehicles, all the crave, and the guy that sits on top of the world. So anyway, we're going to go to a college football game up in Ames, Iowa. We're Iowa State fans, financially obligated because my son went there. So his friend drives up, stays the night at his parents' house, recharges his car. We go up to the football game, and on the way home, he's like, "Oh, we got to stop for 20 minutes because I didn't know that we were going to be stuck in traffic as long as we were going to be. So here we can't even go to a football game and back on a single charge, until the technology changes a little bit there. I don't think where we're at, we're going to be able to get away from, our liquid fuels that we need to do what we need to do. If you see the farmers hauling grain to town, livestock or whatever, what's it going to take for a truck to be able to pull a trailer an hour and a half to take, livestock to the market and back. So that's going to take quite a bit. So I don't see that. Everything is moving so fast. Before we had time to absorb and understand. We went from 3-speed automatic transmissions to in the 80s, we started doing lockup torque converters to get a little better gas mileage. And then we went to an overdrive. And so we had 4 speeds for quite a while. Then all of a sudden, now we're up to 6, 8, 10 speeds, variable transmissions, the CVTs. So I have no idea where we could go. I think there was a day that they thought everything was invented at one particular time and we knew everything we knew. Everything changes so fast, I think. And with that being said, you got to accept that change in your shop. Yes, I've worked on cars for 40 plus years, but yes, it's easy to work on the older ones, but sometimes it's frustrating because they don't work like the new ones. To diagnose them takes old knowledge rather than new knowledge. And you got to change with that and keep, just like a factory, you got to keep retooling. You always have that expense of keeping up. One of the nice things that we do a very good job at keeping up with electronics and miscellaneous tools throughout the shop. And the nice thing is being understanding that your neighbor shops that are also in your community, they're not your competition. They're just trying to make a living as well as you are. I think there is not one shop that I could walk into and sit down and have a conversation with the owner in my town. I would love to be able to take the time just to walk into their shops and, take some of their time, but, just to kind of talk about what's going on for them or, what's new in your shop.
Mhm.
But we trade tools back and forth through the shops. Some people have this, some people have that. Some of the smaller shops don't have some of the specialty tools that we have. So, here it is. We write their name on the board the way it goes.
Yeah, a lot of changes I'm seeing. I'm really hoping that the hydrogen will pull through. We already know that hydrogen will power our internal combustion engine infrastructure that we have right now. The only thing is the infrastructure with hydrogen, it's very
Right.
volatile, so EVs are the green deal. It's a green deal and not a green deal. Right? It's,
I think that's the
know,
first time I've heard it put that way.
Yeah, because that's what it is. I mean, it's proven that by the time you put an EV on the lot, it's already put more carbon into the atmosphere than a
Yes,
combustion engine over the life of the car. These things are an
totally agree.
environmental disaster, and people are walking around, driving around thinking that they're helping the environment out. And no, you're not. And electricity powers the car. And how do we make electricity? Oil and coal and gas,
Mhm.
so I'm kind of watching with rapt attention with the whole thing, so I've driven in them. I love the torque of the EVs, but I'm a Porsche guy. I love Porsche. I love the internal combustion engine. I put fab speed exhaust on them so I hear that roar. I only drive turbos with chips in them, and so I don't think I'll be going EV anytime soon. So
Well, I'm in the middle of, I don't know if it's 15, 16-year project. In 1985, I bought a 57 Chevy from my cousin and
you'll have it.
still have it.
Wow.
I'll have to send you a picture of it.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm real close to having it done. And I
Awesome.
mean, really close. In fact, my birthday was in January, and the day before my birthday, I was working in the shop because I was told I had to leave the house.
Right. Okay. Right.
Wonder what was going on there.
Right.
So yeah, they were getting ready for a birthday party, but that was the first time I heard it run for probably close to 20 years.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
So yes, I took a LS, of course. It wasn't factory by no means when I purchased it.
Sure.
It took me 3 years to get it done the first time, and I got it done a couple days before my wife and I got married. We drove away from the church in it.
Awesome.
Then, now I can buy new rocker panels. What can't you buy for any classic car, right?
Right.
So it's complete frame off. So I made my own rack and pinion steering, 4-link rear suspension, narrowed 9-inch. I hate to say it, but I had to put a Ford rear end in my old Chevy car. So anyway, it's that drop spindles in the front, 4-wheel discs. It had a Muncie M21, so just a regular Muncie, aluminum Muncie tranny, 4-speed. And you can't have a muscle car with an automatic, can you? I do have an 8-speed automatic sitting on the shelf, so if I ever get tired of shifting, I can put that in it.
Put that in, yeah.
But I'm not that old yet. So I end up putting like a 300-gear ratio in the rear end. So it's going to give you the same effect as an overdrive. There's a company in Texas that sells a lot of LS parts. Most of you are all laughing because you know what it is. So they bought a lot of parts from them. So we're knocking on the door 500 horse out of it. I thought about putting a pair of turbos under the hood, but for a car that weighs 2,700 pounds, I don't think I need it.
Well, listen, Brad, I really appreciate your time today and your insight.
For additional automotive resources and exclusive content, follow us on Spotify and subscribe to our YouTube channel to catch all our episodes. Thanks again for joining us in the driver's seat, and we'll see you next time for another thrilling episode of Top Shop.